At first light, a single sound fractured the palace's disciplined silence, a thin, startling cry that rose once, trembled through the stone corridors, and vanished before the lantern-bearers reached the gate. Witnesses later wrote of that dawn as an omen, as if the echo belonged to a door that should never have been opened. It was the beginning of a story almost erased from the archives, the story of a young woman whose voice disappeared behind walls built to protect power, not people. Topkapi Palace in the mid-18th century was a city within stone, a place where public grandeur and private confinement lived side by side. Gardens perfumed with rosewater masked the strict choreography inside. Courtyards where petitioners swirled, chambers where alliances were negotiated, and inner households governed by an architecture of separation. Among these hidden spaces was the quiet pavilion and the life of Fatma, named so in the registers, though later chroniclers, evasive and cautious, preferred to call her the Princess of the Silent Pavilion. Her early years carried none of the seclusion that would later define her. Letters reveal a girl who learned Persian and French, who copied poems with a fine reed pen, who traced the roads of distant provinces on maps borrowed from the private library. These small details matter because they frame what was taken from her later, not only her autonomy, but the imaginative reach of a life that might have been her own. Marriage for families like hers was a diplomatic instrument. Her mother's letters, full of calculations and careful sentences, reveal the arithmetic of survival. A daughter exchanged for loyalty, a future secured through sacrifice. Such decisions were common. What the official records rarely preserved was how they sounded from within the rooms of the daughters they claimed to protect. As negotiations progressed, a suitor was chosen. A commander who returned from campaigns changed in ways the archives do not clearly name. The palace machinery moved into motion. Weeks before the wedding, Fatma underwent a sequence of rehearsals overseen by eunuchs and household teachers. How to walk into the marital chamber, how to hold her hands when spoken to, how to listen without letting sorrow alter her posture. Ledgers recorded every correction with cold precision. Beneath one of the palace's quieter pavilions lay the space servants called the Forbidden Room. It was small, low-ceilinged, lined with tapestries whose gold threads transformed lamplight into a hazy shimmer. Mirrors were set at angles meant not to reflect a face clearly, but to fracture it. Doors locked from the outside. Lanterns were regulated. Every item, cushions, curtains, scents, was documented like inventory, not memory. On the night designated in the household calendar, the palace prepared as if for a performance. Fatma was dressed in embroidered garments, her hair looped with small coins that chimed softly. A maid later wrote that she hesitated before leaving, her finger lingering on the map she kept hidden beneath her books. What happened after the doors closed has no full account, only traces. The next morning, an administrative note stated, "The princess found without voice. She answered in gestures. The physician summoned." His medical marginalia was clinical and restrained. Pallor, trembling, loss of speech, convulsive stillness. No visible wound. The period's vocabulary named it melancholy. Modern language would recognize trauma so deep the body itself withdraws. Fatma's condition became a bureaucratic problem, not a human emergency. Letters urged discretion. Officials reframed the night as illness rather than harm, preserving political alliances while isolating the girl at their center. In the months that followed, she appeared in public rarely. Observers described a presence hollowed out, hands repeating the same embroidered stitch for hours, eyes listening for a sound behind an invisible door. Yet fragments of resistance survived. A hidden verse passed between her and a lady-in-waiting, a mirror smuggled by a sympathetic eunuch, stitch patterns that encoded solidarity among women who understood too well the architecture of silence. These gestures did not undo the harm. They prevented its total erasure. Decades later, newly accessed archives revealed that Fatma's case was not singular. Correspondence across households described similar incidents, similar treatments, similar registry alterations meant to hide inconvenient truths. Patterns emerged. The same medical terms, the same bureaucratic strategies, the same quiet machinery that converted women's bodies into instruments of political stability. These findings did not claim a single villain. They revealed a system. More discoveries followed. A conservator uncovered petitions written beneath erased layers. A regional museum held a textile panel filled with coded symbols used by palace women to mark secret messages. A private notebook from a traveling midwife detailed whispered instructions on how to prepare brides, and how clerks should amend genealogies if alliances faltered. None of these documents confessed outright. Together, they spoke. Fatma lived for many years after her wedding, though the person she had been did not return. She married again according to an administrative correction crafted to mask the first union. A later endowment list includes her name only briefly. The last personal note referring to her ends with a line that survives translation after translation. Her voice remained behind doors. It is a sentence that has become an epitaph, small, stark, and heavy with the weight of what the archives try to fold away. To speak her story now is not an act of accusation alone, but an act of attention. Institutions do their work through repetition, through procedural harm that becomes invisible by being ordinary. Recognizing the system that shaped Fatma's fate is not a closing of the door, but the first insistence that it stay open. If this investigation stirred something in you, subscribe, share, and tell us which hidden lives, buried in palaces, archives, or forgotten corridors, you want us to uncover next. The work continues because silence always leaves traces, and those traces deserve to be heard.